In 2025, I suddenly started experiencing myoclonic seizures out of nowhere. And you're going to want to stay tuned for this one because this one is quite a fascinating documentary about the mind, brain, and body. I once had a math teacher who developed late onset epilepsy in his 40s, and I thought that this was the case with me. I thought that I maybe developed late onset epilepsy later on in adulthood. You don't get it when you're a child, but you get it later on when you're an adult. So I went to the neurologist, I got an EEG. I got an MRI. The EEG technician noticed that I had about a dozen seizures within a 30-minute time frame. And he thought that they were so remarkable and so extraordinary that he actually pulled out his cell phone to take a video of my seizures so he could show the neurologist. After my EEG was over, he told me that he had never seen an adult have seizures like that. He had only seen children have seizures like that. One of my seizures was so violent that my shoe flew off. And to my complete shock, the results were completely normal. There is nothing abnormally wrong in my brain. My EEG results showed no electrical activity that was abnormal. I had no brain tumor. I did not have epilepsy. So what are these seizures? These are medically something called psychogenic seizures. And the neurologist determined my seizures to be stress-induced. I was so fascinated upon finding out that this is a real thing that I dove in and I delved in deeper to try to research what is going on. What is the cause of these seizures? Well, according to AI, this happens when there is a mismatch between your parasympathetic nervous system and your sympathetic nervous system. It happens when your fight or flight system does not match your digestive gut. People who watch my videos say these seizures look uncomfortable, but let me tell you, they feel so good. It feels like a huge wave of relief. And let me try to describe this feeling to you. It basically feels like there is a shitload of dust collecting in my nose. And I have the strongest urge to sneeze. And it just keeps building and building, and building. It's like when you try to sneeze and you're like, achoo! And then when my body finally releases, it's like, oh my God, that feels so good. That is actually what it feels like in my case. So I can actually feel when these seizures are coming based on how intensely it feels like I have to sneeze. And that's usually my cue to just lie down and let it all out. If I was at home and somebody was at my house, I'd be like, hold on, I gotta let this one out. Then I just go in bed and lie in bed until it came out. If I was in the office, I just lean back in my office chair and close my eyes and meditate until it came out. Another interesting thing that I noticed is that these seizures primarily only come out in two stages. They either come out during orgasm or as my body is trying to fall asleep. Apparently, this happens because your brain waves change during orgasm and during the transition to sleep. This is what causes the mismatch in your nervous system. Think of it as like changing gears on a stick shift on a manual transmission. If you do it at the wrong time, your car is going to jerk and stall. That's basically what's going on in my body. By the way, I'm one of those people that can feel when my brain waves change from alpha to theta brainwaves as I'm falling asleep. For my whole life, I've always told people that I can actually feel a vibration emitting from my forehead as I enter deeper stages of sleep. And when I tell people this, they look at me like I have two heads. They have no idea what I'm talking about. But for my whole life, I've always been able to feel this vibration as I'm falling asleep. So my brain is somehow actually able to detect when it is changing from alpha to theta waves. Apparently, I am very hypersensitive to any changes in my body. So another thing that was associated with these seizures is that I would experience a splitting headache. Literally the worst headache I've ever experienced in my entire life. It was so bad that at points, I thought my brain was bleeding and I was experiencing a brain hemorrhage. I thought I was getting a stroke. That's how immensely, horribly painful it was. Before this happened to me, I always thought I was one of those people who was genetically incapable of getting headaches. I've had maybe 10 headaches in my entire life prior to 2024. And here is the proof. You can clearly see that I have text messages where I'm talking about getting a headache, which I found to be highly unusual because I normally do not ever get headaches. Well, all of a sudden, in 2024, I started getting these headaches chronically, and I started having to get Botox injections in my forehead to try to cure and alleviate those headaches. And you can tell that I never had to get these Botox injections prior to 2024 because I used to make this type of video once a year before these headaches started happening.
I can prove I don't get Botox. You see all these lines when I raise my eyebrows. People who have these forehead lines don't get Botox. I learned this from a plastic surgeon on YouTube.
Okay, so I don't have any Botox. Watch when I raise my eyebrows, you see all these lines going across, right? Yeah. Okay, now raise your eyebrows. No lines.
And you can tell that I never had to get these Botox injections prior to 2024 because I used to make this type of video once a year. This video is timestamped in September 2024. Well, shortly after this is when I started experiencing the headaches and I started having to inject Botox in my forehead to try to cure those headaches. That started happening to me around November 2024. Before this date in 2024, I never, ever used to get headaches regularly. Now, all of a sudden, I was experiencing them chronically, all the time. And if I even looked at a computer screen or a phone screen, my brain would feel like it was splitting open. So that's the reason why I haven't been posting online as much and I haven't been posting as frequently. My body can't handle it anymore like it used to. Now, here's something really interesting about these headaches. I also noticed that I would experience headaches in different parts of my brain on different days. And the area that I was experiencing the headache in would frequently correspond to the area of the brain that it controls. Let me give you an example. For example, if I felt the headache deep in my hippocampus, I would frequently get hot and cold flashes, like my body couldn't regulate its temperature at all. And there were a few times where I was experiencing a headache in the parietal lobe. And during this time, I would experience such an insane sex drive. Touch felt hypersensitive during this time, and I would experience insanely long-lasting orgasms. My orgasms, the seizures would come out mid-orgasm, and then my orgasms would sometimes last up to 1 hour. I actually have quite a few videos where I have to take a bathroom break in the middle of my orgasm, and then I come back, and somehow my O is like still lingering in the air, and it's still going, and I pick up right back where I left off after I've gone to the bathroom. You can actually see some of these seizures on my page. It's a fascinating documentary on how the brain and body works. Another time, I was having a headache in the left temporal region, and I noticed that all of a sudden I became really good at speaking Japanese. I was practically speaking like a scholar in a language I haven't spoken in years, in a really long time, and I don't normally speak like this. I normally can't speak like this, so there really is no explanation for it. Just came out of nowhere. Another time, I was having the worst pounding headache in the frontal lobe. And I remember during this time, I couldn't even do basic math. I was trying to add something ridiculously easy up, like what is 13 plus 11? Something ridiculously easy that anybody could do in their head. And for some reason, I was incapable of doing it. I could not physically do it at the time. And I was struggling to do this. I was like sitting there thinking for the longest time. And I was like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Why can't I do this? I can normally do this. The next day, I could do it. But that day, I could not. Oh, and during the same headache, that same frontal lobe headache, my memory was also shot. I had the memory of a goldfish and I kept forgetting what happened like maybe 10 seconds ago. Another time, I was having an intense headache in the temporal region, and I noticed I was having auditory hallucinations. I distinctly remember hearing my content creator's friend. He was talking to me. I can hear his voice. But I clearly know this is not real because my friend is not here. There's nobody here except for me. So I realized that this is a hallucination. And so I found this to be fascinating. It's like my brainwaves were hyperactive in the region that I was having the headache. And depending on the type of headache, it could either impair or enhance the functioning in that region of the brain. At one point, I started getting worried. I was like, dude, what if I experience a headache in my brainstem? Is my heart going to stop moving? Am I going to stop breathing? Is it going to be all over for me at that point? I also discovered that looking at a computer or phone screen for too long is one of the biggest triggers for this type of seizure. Apparently, when you are staring at a computer or phone screen for too long, it activates something called the trigeminal nerve. And I figured this out because I noticed that whenever I experienced these seizures, I would get a throbbing sensation on the very inner part of my eyebrow, where my eyebrow begins. And I noticed whenever I would touch that area of the eyebrow, it would feel inflamed and throbbing, like it was on fire. And I noticed that this pain would always get worse whenever I had the seizures, and so would the headaches, the more and more I looked at any type of electronic screen. Probably the thing that surprised me the most is that I learned that people who experience psychogenic seizures are people who happen to be high achievers who learn to suppress their emotions. And this is definitely me. I don't really cry in front of people or get too drastic with my emotions. I don't even cry in front of my parents or my partners. I'm also on a computer screen pretty much all day for my 9 to 5, and then I'm doing content creation on top of all this. So my trigeminal nerve is quite activated. My brain is cooked. So basically, this happens when a bunch of stress accumulates in your life. You suppress it, and you suppress it, and you suppress it, and you just keep trying to push through. You just keep ignoring it and keep trying to push through. Eventually, that stress builds up and accumulates. If you're not able to release your emotions, those emotions, that tension, it builds up and accumulates. Accumulate that with too much work and too much screen time, and suddenly your body begins exploding and your nerves are misfiring like crazy. So guys, this is a reminder to please allow yourselves to cry and express emotions, and don't stress yourselves out too much, because otherwise it might one day turn into a medical problem like this. It's too late for me. I'm already set in my ways. But if I can save at least one of you before it's too late, then I've done my job. So basically, the 3 most common indicators that you will have these type of seizures are 3 things. Number 1, trauma or stress at some point in your life. Number 2, being a high achiever. Number 3, suppressing your emotions and just working through the pain. Now here's what else is interesting, is that after my ex has been out of my life, I have not gotten a single headache at all. I have not taken a single pill for a headache since 2024, and I also no longer get Botox in my forehead area, which I'll prove to you right now. You see all these lines that I get when I raise my forehead? People who are getting Botox here do not get these lines. The last time I got Botox in this area was April 2025. Here are some other physical signs that I was experiencing some serious stress. Check out these photos that I took of my gray hairs. So again, in 2024, right around the same time these headaches started appearing, I started getting about a dozen gray hairs on the sides of my forehead right here and right here. I always made it a habit to pluck out these hairs whenever I saw them. I thought it was just natural aging at the time, and I didn't think too deeply about it. But interestingly, since my ex has been gone from my life, I have not had a single gray hair. In 2026, the gray hairs are gone. Completely, totally gone. I did not even know that gray hairs could revert back to their original color. I always assumed once it's gray forever. However, AI taught me that if your gray hair is caused due to stress, you can actually reset your root follicle by plucking it out. So this will then cause your hair follicle to grow back to its normal color once the stress goes away. And that's exactly what happened to me. I do not have any more gray hairs at all. So let this be a lesson to you ladies. Being with the wrong man will rob you and steal you of your beauty. I've seen this too many times on TikTok. I'm not even joking. Maybe 2 or 3 days after my breakup with the ex, I had somebody come up to me in the gym and she was like, "Oh my gosh, you look so much younger. You look like you're 18, 19 years old. Did you meet somebody new? Are you like dating somebody new?" She actually thought that I was like in love with somebody new because she told me that I look so much more youthful, radiant, glowing. That's only 2 days post breakup. I didn't put the 2 and 2 together that he was the one causing all this. My gray hairs, my seizures, my headaches, until they all went away around the same time that he exited my life. That is not a coincidence. So although I no longer get headaches, I still occasionally do get muscle tension in the scalp area. So instead of getting headaches in from the inside of my skull, what I'll get knots that develop on my scalp. And every now and then I have to hire a masseuse to get a scalp massage to massage all of the knots out of my head. So my masseuse is from Thailand, and he told me that people get this when they are using a screen for too long, and he is absolutely right. This does happen to me, and it gets worse the longer I stare at a screen. So I discovered that I can prevent these seizures by regularly massaging the knots out of my scalp. But it's kind of a double-edged sword because who doesn't love hour-long explosive orgasms? And in my case, these seizures are psychogenic, meaning they are non-epileptic. So they're not actually doing any damage to my brain. So like, is it better for me to experience these seizures or not? Like, I don't even know. It's kind of a toss-up. And you can actually see this play out in a video. Here's a video where I'm asking my ex to massage the parts in my scalp where I feel these knots and I feel it holding the most tension. You can actually hear it crunching when you press down on it and wiggle it around. And you can clearly see that when he releases the pressure and the tension in my scalp, my body seizes up. So basically, these knots form in my head when I'm experiencing too much stress and simultaneously staring at a computer screen or a phone screen for too long. These knots form all over my scalp, and then that is when I start experiencing the seizures. I'll note another interesting point, which is that whenever I've gotten this same massage from a massage therapist, I've never, ever had a seizure. It never comes out as a seizure. I'm just sitting there relaxing the whole time. These seizures have only ever come out when my ex has massaged my head. So you be the judge on why that is. So after experiencing that crap, I have absolutely zero desire to be in another relationship for a very, very long time. I have been enjoying my life. Thank God, I feel such a tremendous relief.